Log in inNo account. Sign up log out. Russia's equivalent of Google Earth has made an incredible stuff up, revealing the locations of hundreds of sensitive military sites. News Corp Australia NetworkDecember 13, 20,189-20 Amman Eagle-eyed nuclear weapons analyst has uncovered an incredible stuff up by Russia's equivalent of Google Earth. Online mapping company Yandex, which offers a satellite map service, tried to hide foreign military bases in Turkey and Israel through blurring. But they've instead achieved the exact opposite and highlighted them for the world to see. In a damning piece which drags the oversight even more into the spotlight, Matt Korda from the Federation of American Scientists reported that Yandex had selectively blurred out 300 military facilities in Turkey and Israel. When a Russian mapping service tried to obscure every military facility in Turkey and Israel, it had the unintended effect of revealing the exact locations of over 300 distinct sites. Whoops. Grimacing face. See the juicy details in my latest piece for for scientist ShadyP's skeptical smiley face. T.co/2ujovosp5 Matt Korda @MattKorda, December 10, 2018. Many sites were already known, but many others look completely innocuous through sat-sic imagery. Blurring indicates they likely have a military function. Mr. Korda tweeted of his findings alongside a photo of a blurred block of flats in Istanbul. Mr. Korda notes the sites, such as NATO's Allied Land Command in Izmir, Turkey, are not blurred on Google Earth. Yandex appears to have agreed to a request to blur specific sites beyond recognition. It's unclear who made the request. Mr. Korda told News Corp the likelihood of Yandex obscuring these sites on their own volition is very low. In all likelihood, Yandex wouldn't even have knowledge of these sites without lists being provided by the two countries, he said. He said that so far Yandex was the only mapping service that he was aware of that has selectively blurred out sites in Israel and Turkey. The areas of these blurred sites range from large complexes, such as airfields or munitions storage bunkers, to small, nondescript buildings within city blocks, Mr. Korda wrote in his analysis. He added that Google Maps has also done similar things in the past, actioning requests of governments who were eager to keep eyes off sensitive military or political sites. TLDR, Yandex has selectively blurred out 300 military facilities in Turkey and Israel. Many sites were already known, but many others look completely innocuous through sat imagery, e.g. apartment blocks like this. Blurring indicates that they likely have a military function. pic.twitter.com/who9ucsf1 Matt Korda @MattKorda, December 10, 2018. Although blurring out specific sites is certainly unusual, it is not uncommon for satellite imagery companies to downgrade the resolution of certain sets of imagery before releasing them to viewing platforms like Yandex or Google Earth. In fact, if you trawl around the globe using these platforms, you'll notice that different locations will be rendered in a variety of resolutions. He wrote, downtown Toronto, for example, is always visible at an extremely high resolution. By contrast, imagery of downtown Jerusalem is always significantly blurrier. You can just barely make out cars parked on the side of the road. Mr. Korda, who spends his time researching nuclear weapons, pointed out that the Yandex attempt to censor this top-secret information has massively backfired. He also noted that it highlighted the large amount of military facilities that were stationed in Israel. Yandex and NATO's ALC has been approached by News Corp for comment. It's unclear how Yandex plans to respond to Mr. Korda's findings. Mr. Korda said the map locations were still blurred and he has not received any official reaction from the mapping company as of Thursday, Australian time. What's the issue? Mr. Korda said selective obscuring of satellite imagery was a standard and effective method of censorship before the recent proliferation of open-source, high-resolution imagery. In making their requests to Yandex, the relevant authorities in both countries were likely just following these long-standing, institutionalized practices, he said. However, he said with high-resolution satellite imagery becoming increasingly easier to access, aerial censorship such as this simply no longer makes sense. Mr. Korda points out that Yandex's Blurring has also highlighted Israel's Patriot batteries and key intelligence units as well as NATO's ALC, mentioned above, and the Incirlik air base in Turkey. Since 1997, a U.S. law, the Kyle-Bingaman Amendment, stops American companies from publishing satellite images of Israel at a higher resolution than available from other commercial sources. The means services like Google Earth cannot publish any images of Israel that are better than 2 meters resolution, so you can't see much at all when you try to look up close. When you try to zoom in on Israel using Google Earth to look at specific locations such as Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, it's impossible to see anything as it comes up incredibly pixelated. A similar thing happens when you try to look at spots over in Turkey such as Ankara, although it's nowhere near as distorted as the satellite images of Israel. However, if you wanted to see what these spots looked like, say from an aeroplane, you do get a pretty good aerial view using Google. In contrast, when you zoom in on places like Sydney or New York, you get a very good up-close view of the streets and what's happening on them. Yandex is not legally subject to the Kyle-Bingaman Amendment, but Mr. Korda notes that they have typically abided by it as Russia treads carefully in terms of relations with Israel. Turkey does not fall under this law, but instead of making Israel and Turkey as a whole hard to view, Yandex has instead decided to blur out specific sensitive sites, in turn pointing out the places that were meant to be hidden to those unaware and not meant to be in the know. This blurring is almost certainly the result of requests from both Israel and Turkey. It seems highly unlikely that a Russian company would undertake such a time-consuming task of its own volition, Mr. Korda wrote. Mr. Korda said in doing this, Yandex has allowed curious internet users to be able to cross-check locations with Google Maps by matching the blurred spots with unblurred maps on that service. No Russian facilities have been blurred, nor have any in Eastern Europe, Central Asia or the Middle East. Russia's military bases in Syria are also unblurred, but almost all of Syria appears in low resolution, like what Google Maps has done with Israel. When you Google zoom in on Damascus, it's very low resolution also, but better than what you can see hovering over Israel. The Barbra Streisand effect. Mr. Korda said the Yandex blurring was a prime example of the Streisand effect, a phenomenon where attempts to hide or censor information has unintentionally drawn more attention to it. It started in 2003 when Barbra Streisand tried to legally suppress photos of her home in California, but instead drew widespread attention to the location. Beyoncé's team did a similar thing a few years ago when they tried to remove an unflattering photo from the internet, but it instead became a meme. Unfortunately, that photo has since become a picture that we will likely never forget. We haven't included it above, but it's easily found if you try.